Well, welcome to our next Intersections interview. I'm here with Michelle. Hi, Michelle.
Hi.
Hi. And you said, Michelle, I'm going to just jump right into the questions if that's all right with you.
That's fine.
Now, you identify as a bisexual or a sapiosexual?
Sapiosexual.
Sapiosexual, excuse me. What are those?
Sapio meaning intelligence, meaning,
Okay.
I mean, we are Homo sapiens, therefore there is a thing about intelligence and brains and such, and so I'm attracted to smart and quick and intelligence. And
Okay. Okay, so that's what sapiosexual is for you?
yes.
And then how about the bisexual side?
Bisexual side. Numbers are weird, so I don't bother looking at numbers. Bi, in my case, meaning that I'm attracted to people who identify of the genders of their choice. Bi is kind of limiting, but I don't necessarily think of myself as pansexual. That doesn't seem to jibe in my head. Mostly, I seem to be attracted to people who identify as male. That's primarily, and there are much fewer people who identify as female that I'm interested in.
Okay. Okay. And now you identify as a cis-female.
Yes.
But then you said your gender expression is female, but not femme, except when you want to glam up.
Yes.
So can you kind of break that down for me?
I grew up a tomboy. I grew up in jeans and t-shirts and sandals and barefoot and climbing trees and playing tackle football with the guys from the projects, and never really understood this whole femme thing. It wasn't a thing that I really got. But as I got older and watched peers and watched people do that thing, that periodically it's fun to get dressed up. It's definitely a thing that I put on and do. I normally don't wear makeup. I have dresses that I like to wear, but the whole being very femme about it and makeup and nails and hair and is much more rare, and usually for only special occasions.
Oh, okay.
I tend to pick, even in femme clothes, even in dresses and skirts and stuff, things that are comfortable, things that I can move in. Not necessarily things where I am suffering for my art.
Right. That's good. Now you also indicated you're polyamorous.
Mm-hmm.
So how's that work for you?
It works right now differently works right now that I have somebody I'm dating. My husband has somebody that they are dating. I thought I had a second somebody that I was dating, but that seems to be rather iffy in the last few weeks, and haven't settled that completely out yet. I count myself, when it comes to being polyamorous, as having 6 primary relationships. And I'm not sure if you know the terminology. Primary are things that are of the most importance to me, the things that take precedence over other things. And the first one of those is myself. Given the work that I do, given the fact of the other primaries that I have in my life, taking care of myself is the utmost importance, because if I'm not okay, then I can't be there for the other people in my life. I'm married. So my partner, we consider each other primary in our relationship. We own a house together. We have kids together. The 2 kids are the other primaries, are 2 of the other primaries in my life. Ours is the finances that are entangled. We are the ones who make the decisions about the kids. It's that sort of level of primary relationship. To most people, we look like a standard suburban couple, married, both working, 2 cars, 2 kids, dog. But there's more. So me, husband, 2 kids, that's 4. I run my own business. Being self-employed in the business takes that level of priority, that there's sometimes it trumps other things that I have to take care of. And lastly, the 6th one is my friendships. Anyone who gets involved with me has to understand that my friendships take a high priority in my life. They have gotten me through so many things, and that no matter how much time you want to spend with me, I'm going to make time for my friends. And that's kind of how that works for me.
Okay. Okay, very, very cool. And now you talked about your husband. You had said in your questionnaire you've been married for 21 years.
Yep.
And
We
then you have, oh, go ahead.
just celebrated our anniversary yesterday. We've been married for 17.
Wow. It's awesome.
Thank
And
you.
now you have a girlfriend, and you spelled that with 2 R's.
I did. And there's no I in there. It's just GRRL, girlfriend. Because she is fierce but adorable. And she herself does not always identify or feel comfortable as female. And so calling her girl doesn't always feel right for her as well. And it just seemed to be the right thing for us.
So do you pronounce that differently then, or?
No, well, I pronounce it girlfriend. You know, I emphasize the R's more than the I.
Okay. Okay. And she's engaged to a cis-male.
Yep.
And then you mentioned in there the new cis-male sweetie. Is that the one you talked about? That's
Yeah, not so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not so sure. Okay.
We'll see how that goes.
Okay. Now, how do those just day to day? How does your relationships, all those relationships with those people work?
Mostly through internet. We spend time messaging when we can, and we get together on occasion for dinner, movies,
Okay.
dates. Hello, kitty.
Yeah, that was one of our 4.
So we do that. My husband has a weekly date with his girlfriend.
Okay.
And they are usually at her place because we have the kids and it just makes life easier.
Okay. So you all live within proximity of each other, but just
reasonable driving distance. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And the last part of this is usually the bulk of it, but it's just how your sexuality, how your gender identities, how your relationship orientations and your relationships, how they affect you just in different parts of your life. So I'll just kind of go down the list and let me know how they affect you.
Sure.
First of all, socially.
Socially, I'm going to start with the one that is more recently become more comfortable. I've been interested in women probably actively mostly since I got together with my husband. It was not something that I recognized earlier. It probably started with a friend of mine before my husband and I got together, where she had lost her glasses. And when we would go hang out places, she would ask me to check out the women for her so she would know who to go up to talk to, because she couldn't actually see them while we were sitting at the coffee house together. And that's the first time I really looked at women in that particular way. And it was for somebody else. But it started my brain thinking. And then I met someone who just is someone that I love, and it hit me very much, very quickly. And she is awesome. She's the one who performed our wedding ceremony. We dated her together for a number of years, and then she moved out to the West Coast, and it just was not convenient anymore. But she and her partner flew back for our wedding and performed the ceremony. And these people in my life have that sort of an impact. But it's always been hard for me to call myself bi and to feel that I have a right to any sort of queer identity, that B is fairly silent. There's a lot of bi invisibility that happens. If I go walking with my husband, people look at us and we look like a straight couple, like a heterosexual couple. If I go walking with my girlfriend, we look like a gay couple. At no point do walking with people, unless I have one on either arm, is there that bisexual thing. And even then, people will tend to normalize it and go, well, she's likely friends with one of them. And then we get dropped down to being a couple plus one, as opposed to I'm with both of them. So recently I went to a conference called Transcending Boundaries. And this year's keynote speaker, Faith Chatham, I believe is her name, a bisexual activist and such, goes to the White House a lot to talk about bi issues. Did an amazing keynote, and there was a lot of talk there about other people and identities and how we get erased. That started me being okay more with this. And then Robin Oakes did a presentation. You're smiling. You know Robin Oakes?
I know Robin, yes.
Yes. She did her fill out this questionnaire about where you are on the spectrum, about where you were at what age, about how you felt at this one, what do other people think of you. And you go through these 2 pages of stuff, and then you swap them. And then she has you take somebody else's identity and move along that spectrum from 1 to 7, from heterosexual to homosexual, to see how many people in the room fit on just the 1, the 4, or the 7. And really, everybody was spread out. You had some grouping at the ends, but not as much. And she showed us the data where she's done this in churches. She's done this in synagogues. She's done this in corporate worlds. And never has she walked into an environment where that was very clearly 1, where you were heterosexual, 4, bisexual, clearly just by itself, or 7, homosexual. And that meant I was more normal. And that got to be more okay. And since then, I wear a bi pride pin on my jacket all the time. And it's amazing the number of people that comment on it and recognize it. Here, it's this one from the Bisexual Resource Center.
Oh, yes. Yes, I recognize that.
Yeah, and the number of people that recognize that's not a phase, it's my life, is really cool.
That's awesome.
Poly is a thing that was in my life prior to meeting my husband. In fact, both he and I were married previously, and I was currently married when he and I met. And we spent the first while of our relationship with him trying to help me save my marriage. Being a confidant, being a support, being someone that I could ping ideas off of and how to fix this. And when it ultimately failed because that relationship had been failing before he and I met, I had the support. I wasn't alone. And so this has been something I've had in my life for a really long time.
Okay. Actually, backing up a little bit
Sure.
with the other things, the journey that you took to being where you are today and the identities you've kind of touched on a little bit, but can you kind of just your life journey to where you are today and how you've identified? And
how far back do you want me to go?
That's up to you. How far back is relevant?
Well, it started out as being an Orthodox Jew. And going to an Orthodox school from preschool all the way to the end of high school. And being in that community in college was really hard, because where I was, people were more worried about your behavior on the outside, what you looked like, what people could see you do, as opposed to who you were on the inside. So the fact that I had gotten involved with communities I didn't understand, I started going to science fiction conventions, which they didn't get. And from there, I joined a group called the Society for Creative Anachronism. And being in that medieval group, they couldn't understand how I could be a good Orthodox Jew and still be part of those groups. So rather than talking to me directly, they talked to my best friend and got her to talk to me. And basically, it was the fact that I was living my life publicly, without shame, without hiding, doing what I wanted to do, without worrying about what people were thinking of me. Even if that meant that I wasn't following Judaism the way they thought it should be followed. And the way they dealt with their lives is anything that didn't look good to their parents or their community, they went away from home to do. They'd go visit friends at college. They would go travel to another city. They would take vacations with friends. And there they would do whatever it is that they wanted outside the view of the Orthodox community. And because I wouldn't be a hypocrite, I got the short end of the stick. And I left that community. I decided that if they were more concerned about the laws, they completely forgot how to treat their fellow man. They were so worried about appearances. And so I had my breaking of the ways with the Orthodox community. As you can see by the fact I'm wearing a tank top, it is not a thing I do anymore, but still being Jewish is a very strong identity for me. But that left me with an intolerance of hypocrisy. And that colored a lot of what I did. And as I went through relationships, I wanted not to be honest. I wanted people to be honest with me. And the more I tried to create open and honest relationships, the more I found people couldn't do them. And they were surprised when I would make changes. When I started dating that first girlfriend, people would go, "Wait, you're straight. How could you be doing that? You have your own opinions. That doesn't mean that's who I am." And it took people quite a while to accept the fact that I was also interested in women and what that meant for them. And something I've noticed with people in my community, I've got a lot of friends right now who are trans and who are coming out, and that as you change, the people around you question who they are. And that has affected my journey, and that I've started to pretty much only keep the people who can cope with the changes, who can accept me as who I am, no matter who I am at that moment. Does that sort of give you a...
Yeah, that's great. Now going back to how this has affected you in different areas of life. Well, since you talked about that, a lot of your journey was in the Orthodox Church, and that journey.
Not church.
Sorry, synagogue, right?
Judaism. Orthodox
Okay.
Judaism.
Orthodox Judaism.
Yep.
How else has it affected you spiritually?
Affected me spiritually. It's exposed me to people and places and ideas that I might not have come across otherwise. That in leaving that community, in being among people who see things differently, joining the society really gets you an interesting mix of people and religions, because not only do you have modern religions, you have people who are living pieces of ancient religions, and people who want to talk about things and explore and question. The people around me now very much want to question in a more open way than I had before, where the answer wasn't preset. You know, when you're arguing, one of the things I like about Judaism is the fact that it always questions. You're allowed to question anything. You know, arguing scripture is a big deal. But in the end, the idea is you remain an Orthodox Jew. Coming to any sort of other conclusion is unacceptable unless you are becoming more religious. You can argue to your heart's content, but it's got a foregone conclusion to it. Arguing and discussing and exploring with the people that I've met through bi communities, poly communities, science fiction fandom, SCA, and the relevant people that it's pulled me around, pagan communities, Buddhist communities, friends, people who attend Unitarian Universalist churches, people with much more Catholic upbringings. And they're all willing to discuss, and there's no goal into any of these about how you're going to believe at the end of the conversation. And I really appreciate that.
Very cool. And you may end up still believing differently between the two of you, and that's okay.
That's right.
Yeah. How about legally? Any effect?
We've talked about, oh, yes. Well, so there was a time when I did an interview about being poly where it cost me my job. But otherwise, we've had, luckily, no legal repercussions from it, though it's one of those things as a community, we talk about what are the legal repercussions of being polyamorous. We know other people who have had issues. We're friends with one of the main lawyers who has done a lot of the work for National Coalition for Sexual Freedom.
Okay.
There's a Massachusetts group, and we do at science fiction conventions. We've done panels on the difficulties with poly, including talking about poly and kids and what are the legal repercussions. So luckily, we've never had to deal with that.
Right. Okay. How about medically?
Medically, there are stories there, and the medical stuff is not necessarily mine. So I'm going to talk in broader things to things that I have seen. Where within the poly community, I have watched people whose spouses have gone through really hard illnesses, and the people that they were dating, that the ill person was dating, becomes part of the spouse's support network. So if you have within a couple, I'll do the gender normative at the moment. There's a husband and a wife, and the husband spends time being sick, major illness, hospitalization, and he is dating somebody. The person that he is dating becomes a support for his wife. Within communities I've watched where you've had people in poly relationships where a spouse dies. And then how do you deal with the grieving? Who gets to sit there and be the person who gets comforted by the visitors? Who gets acknowledged by the family of the deceased? We've watched people with cancer and how that tears up families, and how having a poly support network is really useful at times for making the care of the sick person easier. There's a comedian in New York, Kelly Dunham, and Kelly did a presentation at Transcending Boundaries about how being in our queer community with the fact of intentional family, where in queer communities you often need to create your own family because there's many people whose families don't accept, that where you've already got intentional family, how do you access that for support for taking care of somebody over a long-term illness? And so Kelly's very out and has talked about what they have been through as far as partners who have had long-term illness, and how this affects health-wise and such.
Sure. It's good that there's conversation actually happening about it instead of just avoiding the topic.
Yes.
It can get complicated. So
well, as the poly community ages, you're going to have more and more people who are going to be dealing with this. Nursing homes are really not equipped for dealing with two spouses, two spice. You know, how do you deal with multiple spice? Hospice care, who's the person? Proxies with multiple people on them. Child care arrangements or guardianships for multiple families. And if you've got one partner that gets sick. I've also seen places where it has failed spectacularly, where somebody's illness very much, splinters a family dynamic, and even being poly or being queer or having that support wasn't enough to hold them together, because sometimes in illness, people don't bring their best selves.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah. Now, how about professionally? I know you said you had one job you lost, but
Yep. I had a job that I lost, where the CEO of the place I was working never actually mentioned that he had seen the article that my husband and I did, and never mentioned the word poly. But something in his manner and everything changed, and he found an excuse to railroad me out.
Mm.
And it wasn't until after I had chose to leave politely, as he had phrased it, as opposed to having it be a hostile thing, which he said what he would put in my record and make my life miserable if I didn't accept, or at least implied the latter. 6 months later, the board got in touch with me and asked me, did he ever say polyamorous to you? Did he ever intimate that that was the reason that this was going on? And I said, no. He said, that's what he had told the HR person and my manager was the reasons.
Wow.
They knew about it, but they were just as terrified of him as everybody else. He had been CEO for over 30 years. He had contacts and seniority and everything. And I lost that job because of it. Otherwise, it's actually helping me because a lot of the work I'm doing is within the queer community right now. So.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, at least it's turned around.
It has.
Even if it started really bad. How about in your families? And family can be whatever families you have defined.
I have a really lovely, intentional family here of 3 best friends that I get to talk to a lot, and they are really awesome, and a large community social network of friends, and most of them I met through poly community, science fiction, SCA, dance groups, pagan groups. They sort of intermix. It's huge, and it's really nice to see and have these levels of care that have been around to raise children in a village of sorts. Among our family, among our village, I've watched an entirely crowdsourced wedding where everything was done by the community to make it happen. From putting flowers together to cooking to the dress, everything, absolutely everything was done through the community and the efforts of the community. I am out as poly to my siblings, my biological siblings. I'm the youngest, so they are both older. The eldest one totally gets it, totally is fine with it. She also knows I'm bi, and we are, despite the age difference, really close. She is 14 years my senior. The middle one, between us, not so much. And as a matter of fact, after our first party where she saw people being affectionate with people who were not their spouses, failed to cope, left with her kid and her spouse, and then later on told me that they would not be returning to my parties because they did not want to expose their daughter to people whose boundaries were so loose. And she never really accepted or understood that all the contact she saw, all the affection, all the physical relationships were all negotiated. It wasn't just people acting on a whim. It wasn't just people, it wasn't swinging or, no relationships beyond what were there. These were all things that had taken care of over time and had been negotiated. And everybody was acting fairly well. But it's not something she's ever been comfortable with, and she's never returned to a party in the 17 years I've been in this house. My mother knew. We came out to her when she came on the internet, and since we had done articles for newspapers and such, we figured if she searched for our last name, she might find them. And we'd rather have a conversation with her that starts, we have something to tell you, rather than one that starts with, why didn't you tell me? So I told her, and she didn't get it. She couldn't understand it. She couldn't accept it. But in person, she always treated the people in our lives really, really well. She never treated them oddly or with suspicion. She conveniently forgot that we were dating them, and just that they were important people in our lives who were there to help, and just treated them like she did the rest of our friends. On the other hand, to my eldest sister, she did express other feelings and sentiments, so we did our best not to push it at her. But both my parents are deceased, so that has mostly stopped being an issue. The kids know. We are out to the kids. Several years ago, we sat down with them and explained to them, this is how mom and dad live their lives. These are our friends. These are people you can talk to and ask questions of. These are who of your relatives and the immediate people around you who know. If you have any questions, if you have anything, what is it that you want to know? They looked at us and says, when's dinner? Because they had grown up around it, and mostly we have always lived our lives as if this is normal. Mm-hmm. We introduce them to the people that we are dating. We take them with us. They become part of our lives, part of our relationships. And people who don't want the kids in their lives and as part of their relationships don't tend to stay in our lives very long.
It goes back to those priorities you talked about, your primaries.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Makes sense. How about any other areas of your life, or anything else that you want to share? Or...
I know there are other places where this is important and it affects. I go off and I do things that are outside of my nice sheltered community where everybody knows and understands about poly, and like professionally. And sometimes I feel a need to hide and not say things. It's much easier to be out right now about being bi than it is about being poly. Mm-hmm. I can, when I'm doing presentations and I'm talking about gender and identity and sexuality and things, I can talk about being bi, and the people in the audience, oh, okay, so you're someone who is bi and identifies. That explains why you're talking about this stuff. But talking about poly is harder because people have a whole lot of conceptions and assumptions about what that means. So when I was in graduate school, I'm in the mental health field. In graduate school, part of the work is knowing yourself and using your own process of understanding of yourself while you're going through things with your cohort of classmates for grad school, to get an understanding of yourself and hopefully other people so that you can be better suited for dealing with stuff in the mental health field. Being out as poly and as bi, and about pushing the ideas back at people on their assumptions of gender, won me no friends. At my graduation dinner, 2/3 of my class were standing together at the very end, and I went over to wish them well and say congratulations, and they all turned their backs on me. Literally, they were standing in a semicircle and closed the circle on me.
Wow.
I remember leaving classes while in grad school, calling my friends in tears. There's still a lot of emotion to that. Yeah. Saying, remind me I have a place where I belong, because these people aren't it. These people don't get, and here they are. These are going to be people in the mental health field. And these are the people who are going to be helping other people with pieces of their lives, and they couldn't even accept their own classmate. It makes me wonder about the field.
Well, hopefully there's more good people like you in it that understand.
I am building a collective of them around me, and people I can refer others to and go to for mutual support. And
that's very cool. Anything else that you'd like to share? Or?
Not that I can think of right off the top of my head. If you have any sort of leading questions or anything else.
I've asked all the ones I had, but
Okay.
you've done a lot. So thank you. Thank you for being honest and transparent with it and sharing with us.
Mm-hmm.
I
You're
really
welcome.
appreciate it.
So I would like to, if I can, speak a little bit to what I know other people have gone through and a little bit for myself.
Okay.
That there's a lot of walking through the world and not feeling represented is the wrong word, but constantly misrepresented. If you go through, let's say you're at a convention and you walk through the hallway and you're looking at people and you go over to a sales booth or someplace where people have information, how do they greet you? What pronouns do they use? What do they assume about you? What do they assume about the people around you? When I went to renew my membership for my my mental health group, they were really fabulous that on their website, there was a lot of choices there for gender. You could pick male, female, other non-agendered, bigender. What else did they have? Gender queer. So they had a bunch of options there. And then they still had other, where you could put in something for yourself. Mm-hmm. Then I went to the Honorifics, where I'm putting in my information and they say, how do you want to be addressed? And so they have Mr., they have Ms., they have Mrs., they have Reverend, they have Doctor, they have all of those things, but nowhere in there other than for degrees that you might have or things that you have earned, was there a gender neutral? And those are small things that people don't think about and don't see until they're interacting with their world. So being bi, being poly, there are a number of things where I go places and I have those moments where people don't really understand. And the world has these things where there's blinders on periodically, that they don't even think to set it up to make it possible for people with non-mainstream identities. And then you add race into it. Mm-hmm. I'm white. There's no way to get around the fact that I'm a white person. But I grew up with a parent who was raised in Mexico. And she spoke Spanish fluently, and the accent she spoke with, very much a Hispanic accent. And so when we'd go places, given dark hair and light skin, people would, some sort of Spanish ancestry, just, we're not dark right now. And so there's picking up on where white gets to be an advantage, and then also places where you're out of place. Being Jewish. In the community where I'm in, there are small amounts. It's not a strongly Jewish community. And watching what happens in the schools for the kids, that they do movies at wintertime to give kids a break just before vacation when they're done with exams. And what sort of movies do they show? Polar Express, Elf, Christmas themed. They're riding the bus to and from school, and what songs are getting sung by their peers? The holidays that we get off, and the holidays they get off from school, they don't get Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur off as a default. We have to write a letter. And even then, they're still responsible for schoolwork. If there's tests, whatever it is, they have to be made up. And the class moves on without them. Passover, all of these things. During Passover, do they change the menu at the school so that kids who are keeping kosher for Passover have something to eat if they're buying lunches? And the answer is no. They don't default to even thinking about it as a thing. The other thing that I'm going to bring in is class. And class affects all of this. The schools assume that one of us is not working. Meetings are all made during the day. During elementary school, the kids' performances were during the day. Not really understanding that, okay, we may live in the suburbs, but we are still a two parents working household. Think about if our socioeconomic status was even lower. What if we were a non-white family? How would this impact everything? What if there were 4 parents that wanted to come to a parent-teacher meeting? Or 3? What if, we weren't available, but one of the people we're dating who's involved with the kids attends that meeting? How does that look or work? And these are just things that, as we go about our lives as a married couple, and I'll use that term couple because that's mostly how we live our lives. But we are, where's my favorite button? I have to find this button. A friend of mine had this made for us years and years ago. She's a clinician now.
Like a rather ordinary couple for large values of 2. I like that.
And that's us. We are a rather ordinary couple for large values of 2. And there's a lot of things that affects small things on a daily basis that aren't big, good stories. When my kids went to a sleepaway camp, I got a phone call from another parent that said, "We saw your last name on the door, and your last name is Rare. Would that happen to be your kid in that room?" And I said, "Yes." And they asked, "Are you out to them?" I said, "Yes." And they said, "Oh, good. Our kid then doesn't have to hide the fact that they have 3 parents." And, we can talk about and the kids can talk about the fact that the parents know each other and who their families are. And it just was, luck that they wound up at the same camp in the same dorm room for that camp. And it was really nice for them to have that. But you're going to camp and you can't talk about the fact that, you may have 3 parents, or that, how does this look for queer parents? These things happen for the kids as well. I was just talking to a friend last night who has grown up in a poly household and is now in college. And her friends keep coming to her for advice and for understanding. And one of the things they've realized is they keep doing it because, and they're astounded by it, because they get to see that maybe this is an actual life choice that they can have and still be mature adults, and it's still growing up. It's not a thing that you only do when you're young and that when it's time to settle down, you have to stop doing this. You can actually raise kids and have a family and be real responsible adult people and raise good kids and be poly or polyamorous or queer or bi or whatever it is. So
hopefully it'll keep changing and people will understand more.
I certainly hope so.
All right. Well, thank you again, Michelle. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
For you taking the time to do this. And yeah, we'll be seeing you later. Maybe I'll see you at a Transcending Boundaries conference.
That would be cool.
All right, thanks.
Hey, this is Mike. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to see some more videos, we'll be getting them out onto our YouTube channel, and you can also check them out on the Facebook page and our website, intersections.info. If you'd like to be interviewed, there's a link below that'll show you how to go through the process and get in touch with us so we can interview you. If you'd like to help support us financially, we do have a Patreon campaign set up. If you contribute monthly at the bronze level or higher, we'll give you early access to all the videos about 24 hours before everybody else gets to see them, plus some private chats and things like that. They're available. So check that out. And if you'd like to just make a one-time contribution, we do have a GoFundMe campaign. that's out there to try to get some better equipment, things like that. So check us out and let us know what you think in the comments, and appreciate it. Thanks.